Want to watch football without the restrictions of blackouts or cable? Check out expressvpn.com to help you get access to all the live games. Sign up today using the link in the description to get 3 free months.
Yo, the Bowl fam, it's the director. If you guys have been watching this channel for a long time, you'll probably remember that I've been a huge advocate for Jalen Ramsey coming to the Chargers. There's plenty of reasons to think that would be a massive, massive move for this defense. For the longest time, it just didn't seem possible. The Rams were not going to move on. That contract was ridiculous, etc., etc. Well, guess what, Bull fam? It's likely happening. It's happening. It's happening, everybody. Stay calm. It's happening. I'm not saying in terms of the Chargers grabbing him. I'm saying it's happening in terms of the Rams actually moving on. Jalen Ramsey has become available in some sense. And honestly, I'm in both parts excited and gutted at the same time. Because I do think, yeah, there's a slight chance that the Chargers could maybe pursue Jalen Ramsey if they felt he was important enough, which I guess there's evidence to suggest that. But the Chargers are also not in the best position to make a trade like this happen in 2023. Sure, 2022 last season. If this had gone down last year, I think Jalen Ramsey would be in a Chargers uniform right now. But given the Chargers situation today, it would be a lot harder to swing. Impossible? Absolutely not. But at the same time, it is a lot less likely. Still, we're going to talk about it anyway because I do have to admit there is a way to get Jalen Ramsey on the Chargers. We as Chargers fans and the Chargers organization need to weigh that option to see whether or not it is worth it for themselves, because Jalen Ramsey, one of the biggest parts of the Brandon Staley defense with the Los Angeles Rams in 2020, one of the best defenses in the league, that could make a significant impact with the Chargers. So before we do get started, guys, shout out to the sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. We got some NBA games going on tonight. If you guys want to check that out, use code DIRECTOR to match your first deposit up to $100. I'll be watching and then poking around a little bit too to see if we can learn a little bit more about the NBA to participate, because man, is it a good time. Before we do get started, hit us up with a like and sub if you do enjoy this Chargers content. Small amount of time you guys take to hit the like, sub, and bell notification helps me out a lot. Let's get into it. Lights, camera, action. Jalen Ramsey to the Los Angeles Chargers. Is it possible? Man, dudes, again, if you know me and you've known me the past several seasons, you will know that this is something that I have literally been pounding the table for. Jalen Ramsey in a Chargers uniform would be absolutely insane with Brandon Staley and Derwin James. Either way, let's get going into what's going on, all right? Tom Pelissero comes in and says the Rams have had trade talks about 6-time Pro Bowl cornerback Jalen Ramsey, and league sources now believe it's very likely Ramsey is dealt in the coming weeks. Now, here comes the important bit. Ramsey, 28, is due $17 million in 2023 on a front-loaded deal that averages $20 million, and LA is clearing cap space. All right? He's going to be a lot of money. And the Chargers, if you were unfamiliar, don't really have a lot of money right now. Is it possible? Yeah, it's going to take some sacrifice, though. But first, let's go ahead and take a look at what's going on with the Los Angeles Rams. Why are they doing this? Well, it just seems that it's a simple, open and shut case of they need the cap space, right? They are creating a new, I guess, I don't know, not even identity, but they got to find a new road for themselves going forward, because it seems that they've pushed the big red button after a disappointing season, right? Uh-oh, the Rams won a Super Bowl, and then everything's going to crap. We're going to have to figure out a way out of this. They're trying to grab some cap space and reset just a little bit. I wouldn't say rebuild at all, but I would say they're trying to figure things out in terms of moving forward after last season's disaster. And in order to clear some cap space, you're going to have to make some big moves. They already made a really huge one in Bobby Wagner. You guys see this in social media? Bobby Wagner. And the Rams mutually agreed to part ways. Do I think, first off, I'm going to get a lot of questions about this. I've been getting a ton of questions about Jalen Ramsey. Are we getting Bobby Wagner? No. If we're not keeping Drew Tranquil, which there's a chance that he does not return to the team, I don't think there's any way that the Chargers go after Bobby Wagner. Either way, Bobby Wagner, that's already a move that the Rams have made, right? Clearing significant cap space with him. Next is going to be Jalen Ramsey. Now, this one's a bit curious to me because in terms of cap space and money saved, it's not a lot of money this season for the Rams. I think they're clearing something like $5 million, but future dollars, you can certainly say would make an impact for this team going forward. So to answer the question of why are the Rams moving on from Jalen Ramsey? Has he regressed? Is there something going on with him? No. Jalen Ramsey, he's still been great. Maybe not peak Jalen Ramsey, but my goodness, still one of the best cornerbacks in the entire league. And one that honestly, we take a look at what the Chargers did last season with J.C. Jackson, and everybody's so excited. Maybe not the best scheme fit. Maybe it did blow up in our face a little bit. In terms of scheme fit, this entire scheme was built around Jalen Ramsey. We'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second. So in terms of the Chargers perhaps taking on a giant contract like Jalen, is there any good news to be found whatsoever? And I kept digging and digging and digging, and I guess maybe a little bit. This next segment is called a slight discount, I guess. All right, let's take a look at the contract of Jalen Ramsey here. Keep in mind, the Rams are going to be soaking in a heck of a lot of dead cap, all right? Take a look here. We went ahead and we changed this to trade pre-June. That's what would be going on. The Rams would be acquiring $19.6 million in dead cap. That is something that they just have to pay, right? And that's a lot of cash. It only clears about, what, $5.6 million for them? So in the immediate terms, not a lot of money saved for 2023, but in the future, it should save them maybe a bit more than that, right? And that number, $19.6 million, this comes from the base salary this year, plus the prorated bonuses that you're going to find throughout every single season after that, all right? So that is how much the Rams are having to pay him for it. So you can almost say that $8.2 million towards his next contract, $3.2 million towards that contract, the $8.2 million for this season, that's all being covered by the Rams. So if there was a determined to trade him, Ramsey's cap would actually be kind of reasonable considering his talent, right? One of the best corners in the league for $17 million. That's only made possible because the Rams have to chip in and pay that player to play for a new team. In this case, hopefully being the Los Angeles Chargers. Now, you would be adopting, let's be honest here, you would be adopting not just the first season for Jalen Ramsey. You would be adopting several seasons, right? So with the 3 seasons left on his contract, 29, 30, and 31 in years of age, so 2023 through 2025, those 3 years would be automatically added to the Chargers if they were to pick him up. And as you'll see here, the base salary is actually not too bad, right? The base salary here, what, at $17 million the first year, but it was front loaded, so you're going to see 14 in 2024 and 15 in 2025. That's not too shabby for one of the best corners in the league. And again, only made possible because the Rams have to pay up the nose all this dead cap. But the biggest wrench in the machine that I'll be honest with you guys, I'm not quite sure on how it works. Maybe this is something the Rams need to soak up. Maybe it isn't. Maybe it's something that I don't know if it gets wiped away. It's going to be this number right here, the roster bonus. You guys maybe in the comment section can help me out a little bit with this. Does the roster bonus translate, right? Because if it does, then all of a sudden you're looking at a bit of a steeper contract for the rest of this contract, right? Or for the rest of his tenure there. You'd be looking, instead of $14.5 million, $18.5 million. Instead of $15.5 million, $19.5 million. It gets a lot steeper. So I don't know. If this number doesn't exist, which again, whether or not it translates, I don't know. It would definitely shift my thinking in terms of, is Jalen Ramsey worth $14 million, $15 million? Is there room to restructure the $17 million, perhaps a couple million bucks to make it just a bit easier moving forward? Make this a nice kind of even number throughout his career. I don't know. Either way, these numbers here, that's not bad for a Jalen Ramsey. And the only reason that's happening is because the Rams need to soak in a heck of a ton of dead cap. All right? So no matter what, a trade, even if it is the case at 15, 14, and 17, because of the Chargers situation, it's a pretty steep financial commitment. All right? But we have to weigh in whether or not this would be worth it to the Chargers. And this is kind of the way we do that. This next segment's called the Stallion Derwin effect. Okay? Back in the day when Derwin was 33. Let's not confuse the youngins. Now, if the Chargers had no cap issues whatsoever, right? I think the Chargers would be the number 1 spot for Jalen. I think Jalen would be, across the street with the Chargers, playing Red Rover with the rest of the defense all day long. It'd be the done deal. But that's just not the case right now. The Chargers do not have cap to spend. They're going to have to create cap to go out there and already solve the issues they have in front of them. Not even thinking about bringing on another monster contract. I didn't think there was any possibility for a monster contract this year, and I was pretty cool with it. But all of a sudden, you're dangling Jalen Ramsey in front of me. Things might change just a little bit. But taking a look at the Staley and Derwin effect, right? Because these two individuals could play a massive role in a blockbuster trade if it were to happen. Again, this is a little bit of fantasy land. This is a little bit of, realistic stretching of the imagination, we'll call it. Staley, we'll start with him. Staley built this defense, his defense with the Los Angeles Rams, largely revolving around Jalen Ramsey's talents. I don't think that defense is a success without Jalen Ramsey. He found massive success in doing so. Massive success. Being able to heavily rely on that cornerback one to set and forget, erase a receiver completely from the offense, that allowed him to do a lot of things. And as good as some of the Chargers cornerbacks are right now, I cannot tell you we have the same talent on this team. We were really hoping to find that with JC. It didn't work out. Jalen Ramsey, however, that is a sure done deal. In a system that's already proven to work with Brandon Staley. He knows. He's probably one of the best minds on planet Earth that knows how to utilize that talent. There's very few players in the NFL, in the league, that you could say the same. Maybe Sauce Gardner a little bit, right? Maybe a couple other names, but Jalen Ramsey's got to be among the top three. And he's already got a pre-existing relationship with Brandon Staley. So in terms of taking it to the next level, Brandon Staley, he would know exactly what to do with that Jalen Ramsey talent. As a matter of fact, if Staley had known there was any chance in hell of landing a Jalen Ramsey in 2023, I really doubt that he pursues J.C. Jackson in 2022. Bringing in this guy that helped you build one of the best defenses in the league, all of a sudden, oh, heck yeah, man. That's worth the wait. That's worth the investment. Because having Jalen Ramsey means that Staley's job becomes that much easier. He can dig back into the playbook of 2020, use things that were massively successful in his time with the Rams, and feel very confident in building the system that he had back there in some way, shape, or form with the Chargers. There is so much you can do with Jalen Ramsey. And I'm not just talking, playing that corner position that's next to his name, CB. No, Jalen Ramsey does it all. In a lot of the same ways Derwin James does it all. Derwin James isn't just our safety. He's everywhere. More specifically, that star position we talk so much about. That star position played by Jalen Ramsey. The star position played by Derwin James. Having two of them? Are you kidding me? Then there's the talk about Derwin James. He plays a big role in this too. The Derwin James effect. Now, I get it. Relationships between players, those rarely result in actual moves in the NFL because you're talking about, hey, this dude's buddy with that dude. Let's go ahead and hire them. Let them work together. That's not really how it works. But every once in a while, it kind of does, right? There is some influence there, especially when that player is so close with your head coach. That's something to consider. Jalen Ramsey, if you guys didn't know this, Jalen Ramsey, Derwin James, these are like best buds. Some of the best buds you'll find in the entirety of the NFL. These dudes, from start to finish, they have been connected to the hip, hoping to play in the NFL together. As a matter of fact, they swore to play together at some point in their careers. They're going to make it happen. And right now, this may end up being their only shot to do so unless they want to play in their twilight years together between like the ages of 32 and 35. If they want to get any shot at playing in their prime together, it's got to happen now. And with Derwin just recently being extended by the Chargers, it is Jalen Ramsey that would have to come to the Chargers. And right now, there's an opportunity to make that happen. Can you guys just imagine for 2 seconds what the defense would look like with Jalen Ramsey and Derwin James playing together? The kind of chemistry that you would find. The kind of uses you could put those two players to if you're Brandon Staley. It would be borderline unstoppable. Perhaps the best secondary we've seen maybe ever. A long, long time at least, right? For the Los Angeles Chargers, for the Chargers as an organization. The thought of these two taking the field together is absolutely insane. So when considering this, we got to talk about Brandon Staley and Derwin James having an effect on that trade. Because as outlandish as it is, as impossible as it may seem, the fact that these two guys are with the Chargers make that ridiculous trade a little bit more possible in my eyes. Okay? So now we got to talk about, I don't know, some of the gravy here. Some of the meat and potatoes. Getting down to the logistics on how this could possibly work, because there's going to be a cost, a steep cost, a Thanos-type cost for the Chargers, right, to make something like this happen. This next segment's called At What Cost? Man, just seeing those two together, man, that would be insane. But what would it cost? So let's say for a second that the Chargers are serious about trading for Jalen Ramsey, right? Woo, director's super excited. We're all excited. We're all pumped. We might be getting Jalen Ramsey. This is huge. Maybe we see a tweet, by a big beat writer saying, the Chargers are heavily considering trading for Jalen Ramsey. How crazy that would be. We would all be so excited. But how would this work, right? How would this work for the Chargers? The Chargers, $20 million over the cap. There's no way this works, right? They have a monster contract in Justin Herbert coming very soon. On top of having to get under the cap this season, trying to pay the stars under the roof right now. Is there any way the Bolts could make this happen? Is it impossible? I would say, yeah, it's possible, but with significant effort. Okay? First off, the Justin Herbert thing. Try not to spoil a video I have planned for a little bit later, but when you structure a quarterback's contract like that, taking a look at, we'll say, Patrick Mahomes' contract, what teams tend to do is give the first couple of seasons, right, at a very significant discount so they can sort out their books going forward. I think Patrick Mahomes may have ended up being less than $6 million a year for the first 2 years of his contract. So in terms of being able to afford Jalen because of Justin Herbert's contract, I think that's already fine. We'll still be able to sign Justin Herbert. Like a lot of other huge contracts for quarterbacks, the first couple of seasons should remain pretty flexible. I think that's okay. But what about the other things about this season, right? Chargers still $20 million over the cap. 23 if you count what they need for the draft. Well, for one, the Chargers would not only have to get under the cap this season, but create another $17 million on top of that. Because, guys, if you remember the contract here, right? $17 million. That is minimum what you're going to have to pay if you trade for Jalen. Now, you might get lucky and the Rams might say, hey, yeah, we'll soak up another $2-3 million for you to make this trade happen. Not likely, because they're only saving $5 million to begin with this season. But I guess it's possible. I don't think it's very likely. So all of a sudden, the Chargers would have to at least raise, we'll say, $37 million, $40 million with the draft. $40 million. Is that possible? I mean, kinda, right? Let's not get too ahead of ourselves. With restructures and smaller cuts, we've already talked about this. We know the Chargers can clear $20 million. We know that can work, right? That $20 million, with some sacrifice, the Chargers can get under the cap this season without considering a Jalen Ramsey addition, right? But to clear that extra $17 million, we're talking some big decisions. For starters, you're looking at a pretty big cut, right? That would be involved. Keenan Allen or Khalil Mack, I'm guessing it would have to be one of those two. That would save a significant chunk of money, and it's not something that I think I'm willing to do right now. Maybe the team is, depending on how they view a Jalen Ramsey. But I see a lot more value. And maybe not more, but I don't know. I find so much more working. We know what's working now with Keenan Allen and Khalil Mack. A big sacrifice like that would be almost necessary. Maybe a couple of smaller sacrifices could be justified. For instance, if you're picking up another corner, the Chargers have a guy on the roster that they could technically cut to save some pretty significant cap, and his name's Mike Davis. So if you have Jalen Ramsey, J.C. Jackson, and Asante Samuel, which is three really strong corners, maybe you don't need Michael Davis. You can cut him, save $7 million, and then try and do some restructuring or cuts additional to what we already have to do to get under the cap to keep a guy like Keenan Allen and Khalil Mack while also making that kind of cap space. It's really tough to say. All I'm going to say is it would require tremendous sacrifice. Either cutting a guy like Keenan Allen or Khalil Mack, or cutting Mike Davis and a few other players to make that happen. Tremendous sacrifice. Next, you would likely have to restructure Jalen Ramsey himself in order to further get that number down for this season. Let's say it's like, we kind of barely made it work, but we're $2-3 million over the cap still. You could restructure, theoretically, Jalen Ramsey to get under that number. But that makes Ramsey's contract extremely hard to maintain for the next 3 seasons. $20+ million. If this number, again, the roster bonus, if that's something that translates. If not, I think it's a lot easier. Very, very tough. Very, very difficult. And we haven't even started talking, or I should also say this before we wrap that up. In the end, you're going to need to sign a few additional free agents too, right? So you're going to have to find some way to save even more money. You got to find guys to come in here and fill needs. Then finally, you'd be locked in during the draft to fill out the star that you cut if you ended up doing that. So if the Chargers like their flexibility at 21, goodbye. If they even have 21, goodbye. You're going to have to draft an edge or a wide receiver. You'll have much less flexibility to think outside that box. Now, speaking of, we might not even have 21. We haven't even talked about trade compensation yet. Now, for the Rams, I would imagine they're going to want something very significant in return for Jalen Ramsey. And yes, I'm talking at least a first-round pick. You can even convince me too, is that that's what they're not going to budge for. The Rams could want 2 first-round picks. You guys remember what they gave up for him? A lot. So I would say maybe at minimum first-round pick from the Chargers. Maybe even more because we have the 21st pick, right? Maybe that's not high enough to please what the Rams are looking for them to pull the trigger on that. So we're talking maybe a first round, even more. So if the Chargers are going to replace big talent that they cut, let's say they do cut Keenan Allen, right? That blows. Well, you're not going to be able to replace him with a first round guy to supplement that. You're going to have to wait till the second, third. That's really significant, dudes. And that's a lot to ask for. So I will say this. There is an off chance that the Rams maybe get shoehorned into a friendlier deal. We've seen this year in and year out. A player comes in here, says they're unhappy, want to get traded. They're the reason they're being traded. That draft compensation does tend to come down. Ramsey, I feel like, is already starting that journey a little bit where he can influence his own trade value in various ways. And the more determined he is to leave, the lower that compensation could be. So if we're, again, living in fantasy land, there is a chance that Ramsey becomes available for maybe, like a second? At the very minimum, though. And I don't think that's very likely either. But maybe there's hope. You never know. So to wrap things up a little bit here, guys. My consensus on Jalen Ramsey, okay? I almost bust my heart wide open to even say this. Last year, I would have been all over this, all right? Last year, I'd have been like, do whatever it takes. Get Jalen in the building. Derwin and Jalen need to be playing together. I don't care the cost. Can you imagine what Brandon Staley could do with this defense? Yada, yada, yada. Now, I just don't know. While I can't dismiss the possibility of Jalen Ramsey joining the Chargers, because it is possible with tremendous sacrifice, I just think the price is too steep for me. And I'm talking me, right? Who knows what the Chargers are thinking, but I'm thinking you're not only have to get under the cap, you're telling me I have to part ways with a star like Keenan Allen. You're telling me I have to cut a guy like Vato. You're telling me I have to give up maybe my first round pick. These are the things that are more than likely necessary. Now I'll ask you guys in the Chargers chat. What do you think? Is it worth it to you? Is Jalen Ramsey worth cutting Keenan Allen, possibly Mike Davis, and giving up a first-round pick, maybe even more? Because that's realistically what I think it would take for him to come to the Chargers. It's a lot. It's a lot. Tremendous cost. Tremendous sacrifice. But it's really impossible to think about the effect that Jalen Ramsey could have with the Chargers. He's a sure thing, dudes. J.C. Jackson was not a sure thing. That was a big risk, and it blew up in our faces. I still have hope that he's going to see a turnaround in 2023, but it's not guaranteed. For me, I know I don't like speaking in certainties here, but Jalen Ramsey almost feels guaranteed. This is the man that helped Brandon Staley get a head coaching job, and to reunite those two would be significant for this defense. But at what cost? Let me know in the comment section below what you guys think. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me. This has been The Director. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I wanted to make this video not to get people amped up about Jalen Ramsey's coming to the Chargers, but more to answer the big question I've been getting asked the last couple of days since this news broke, okay? Been asked, Director, by any stretch of the imagination, is this possible? I still get messages rolling in, probably as I'm recording this video. And this video is here to answer that. Yeah, it's possible, but with tremendous sacrifice. Us as Chargers fans will have to weigh that for ourselves. Is it worth it? In the end, it doesn't matter. It just matters what the Chargers organization thinks. And I would say it's a very small chance that they go after Jalen Ramsey, but I cannot dismiss the fact that Brandon Staley's on this team, leading this team. Derwin James is on this team, leading this team. Both of those guys have tremendously large relationships with Jalen Ramsey. It's something you have to weigh in. It's something you have to weigh in. So you guys let me know in the comment section below what you think. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me. This has been The Director. We'll see you next time. If you like what you saw here, hit us up with a like and sub on your way out. As always, bolt up and stay frosty. Let me end on this real quick, because don't be fooled. Jalen Ramsey is worth a lot of sacrifice because the impact he has on this defense could take this defense, let's say, from a top 10, top 15 potential to literally top 5. He did it for the Rams. He could do it for the Chargers.